also one big advantage we have is that we are the only listed gaming company today in our market, and that allows us to also offer our equity, which is listed equity to partners, and that's a big opportunity because one, it gives us further leverage, but it also allows us to get our incoming partners, founders, management teams to hold Nazara stock, which kind of aligns them to the overall growth story.
This is Siddharth Alwalia. Welcome to the 100x Entrepreneur Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Prime Venture Partners, an early stage VC fund led by Amit Somani, Shripati Acharya, and Sanjay Swami. Prime is often the first institutional investor in category creating tech startups in fintech, SaaS, healthcare, and education, such as MyGate, Neo, and Reco. To know more about Prime, visit primevp.in. Today, I have with me Nitish Mitrasen, founder of Nazara. Nazara is one of the largest gaming companies out of India and recently went what every company aspires to be, going public. So, Nitish, congratulations on going public. It's an every entrepreneur's dream to take their company public, and we are very fascinated by our journey. It's been a long marathon, all right. So would love to start by knowing more about you. Your background, like your journey before Nazara, right? Your family background, where you grew up, your parents.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you for having me on this podcast. I came from a textile family background, and since my grandfather's time, they were running, my family was running a textile mill, cotton mill. But I got into gaming at a young age. My dad bought me a ZX Spectrum when I was 6, and I was completely hooked to it. By the time I was 7, I was coding games in BASIC. And actually, my life became that, computers, technology. Then, when I was in school, the internet came, and I was fascinated by what it had to offer. So, I think I just took a different turn in my life. And then I was studying in college in Mumbai, planning to go abroad for an MBA, and then Nazara happened, and 3 decades later, here I am in front of you.
At what age you started Nazara? In LinkedIn bio, it mentions 2003, but I believe it started much before that.
99, 99.
And you were still in your final year of your college when.
Correct, correct. So yeah,
And
I
what was
was
the first avatar of Nazara when you started
9.
in '99?
We started as online casual games, so flash games at that point of time. Uh, HTML5 games or Flash. Actually, it was Flash that time. So Flash games on Nazara.com, where people could log in and play, and we would actually have the ads as a revenue model. So yeah, that was at the peak of the dot-com boom in 99 2000.
And then .com happened. What happened to the business back then?
Yeah, I mean, at that time we were all chasing vanity metrics here, page views and number of users, etc. Really, revenue was a second afterthought, and really proper viable revenue models didn't exist. So I kind of, post dot com crash, I would say April onwards, right, of 2000. There was a lot of flux. It took me time. I was a young entrepreneur. It took me time to understand what was happening. So lost a bit of money. It took me 2 3 years to kind of recover and pay that back. So really lost, I think, 3 4 years in that. It was a struggle, but a great experience. I often say I did an expensive but enriching MBA sitting right here in Mumbai.
And you had borrowed that money for your company. I believe venture capital was not as popular back then as it is today
Yeah,
in
yeah.
India.
First from my parents helped fund it, then from friends and family. So I put in 3 4 crores right at the start to get the business started in the early years.
And what after that period, right? The 4 years of, I would say, grind or hell.
Yeah, I think it was, of course, extremely challenging time. But like I said, now in retrospective, it was a fantastic learning experience, right? And it has so many learnings from there have held me in good stead over the years. So I think I kind of appreciate now. I kind of value that learning rather than regret that time in that sense. Of course, at that point of time, it was a lot tougher.
And gaming was I believe, not so popular sector back then, especially online games, right? At that point of time, hardly 5%, I think 5% is also too much. 5% of the India didn't have access to internet.
Yeah, it honestly, yeah. Now I think we probably 98, 99 when we started. From an India gaming perspective, we were maybe a decade too early. You didn't have uh, proper internet. You didn't have the devices. Those were the challenges, which over the years, of course, improved significantly.
And can you share your journey, like key milestones from 2003? What you built? What are the revenue sources that keep the company floating? How did you repay back the debt?
Yeah, I think so. The debt was repaid by 2004. Through revenue models that had kind of been able to generate and profits had been able to generate. From 2004, we kind of jumped back into gaming in a proper way. We focused on mobile phone gaming instead of the online gaming that we were doing. Started working with many telcos in India, expanded that business globally over the years. So by 2000, I would say 7, 8, we were running a fairly profitable, tight, lean and mean shop in that sense. Westbridge Capital had invested in 2005 and 2007 small amounts of money, $1.5 million each. We raised a total of $3 million, and by then the company had become profitable. So then we focused very much, because of the early struggle that we had. Our focus was a lot on cash flows, not chasing vanity metrics, focus on tangible business. So from 2007 to about 2015, we raised, I mean, not raised, we kind of accumulated profits of about 200, 250 crores, and hadn't raised any more capital. From 2015 onwards, we kind of started again expanding into different verticals of gaming, and we approached, I would say, a acquisition-driven strategy, which we also like to call Friends of Nazara, ecosystem, and that also worked out very well for us and was an enabler in terms of the IPO that happened, as we were able to dominate multiple verticals within the gaming space and also scale in terms of revenues and profits. So it's been a evolution.
And which were the companies that you acquired from 2015, and what value did, if you can share,
Yeah,
each
we,
one
we acquired
contributed?
we acquired Nodwin Gaming, which is the leader in esports in India, a majority stake in that company. We acquired Next Wave Multimedia, which is the producers of World Cricket Championship. Then later on, we did Paperboat Apps, which have an extremely popular kids app called Kidopia, which is especially very popular in the US market. We bought a sports news media company called Sportskeeda.com, which is also part of our portfolio. In recent times, we've acquired a company in Turkey, which is a game marketing agency called Publish Me. So I think that model of Friends of Nazara has now got set over the last 3 4 years, is working well for us, and we find that as a fantastic way to partner and align with passionate founders and management teams, with whom we can kind of approach our common dream in that sense of doing something big in the gaming space.
And I believe also that's sends out very warm messages in the ecosystem that entrepreneurs can coexist with the company which acquires them.
Yeah, our we call it Friends of Nazara because our philosophy is really to collaborate, and all of us are friends, like I said, pursuing a common dream that we have, and there's no acquiree and acquirer in that sense, right? So I think the structure that we follow in the Friends of Nazara is where we give 100% operational freedom to the investee companies and their original founders and management teams to run it as if they own 100% of the company, because they are the experts in that particular vertical, and it makes most sense for them to work that way. What we do, of course, is value add in terms of our network, our experience, synergies between other companies in our network, our own network globally of we've been working in 70 80 countries, so many of these companies we can take into international markets. So there's a lot of value addition that we bring to the table, but it's not usually forced, right? The team running that business sees synergies in it, they kind of pick it up. Otherwise, they do their thing, what they are best in, and I think that's working best for us as well.
And for you, even, right? Building a business for more than 20 years, was it a tiring journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think over 20 years, right? I would say gaming always looked like I would say it was like a oasis in the desert, not an oasis, a mirage in the desert, right? You would think was next year or the year after gaming is going to take off, and then you would get to that point and it would still feel, the market is not there, and it'll be there in another 2 years. Also, the industry would go through a lot of hype and pessimism cycles, right? Suddenly there would be a lot of excitement, then that would die down, then there would be a lot of pessimism saying that money can't be made in gaming. So I think yeah, it's been a long journey, and I would be joking to say that at times there was fatigue, but I think what we did well was be able to pick ourselves up, persevere and fight, live to fight for another day. I think because of our conservative nature, we didn't burn a lot of money, and we were accumulating funds through our profits. So at least that allowed us to keep existing and keep sustaining till the opportunities really presented themselves to ourselves. And I think that was critical in a business where you were too early in the market. It's very easy to get burnt out in that kind of an environment.
You raised your first venture capital in 2005, then the next round in 2007. Wasn't it tempting back then to go on and keep on raising more money instead of being profitable? Because being profitable is hard, really hard.
Right. No, I think I started enjoying being profitable. Uh, I'm a come from Marwadi background, so we understand profits well. So once I tasted that blood, I was hooked to it. So I think I really enjoyed it, and even today I enjoy it. So I think it was true to our DNA to run profitable businesses, and that's how we've run it. Of course, since a lot of entrepreneurs may hear your podcast today, right? I think everything has a time and a place, right? And today, many opportunities exist on a much larger scale than what they presented themselves way back in 2007. Also, the ability to raise capital, because our investment industry has matured a lot more with VCs, PEs. You see it, right, every day, the kind of money that is flowing. So I think strategies may need to change, and just trying to run a profitable business today may not be good enough. If the opportunity to scale and create a massive business exists, right? Because you have investors who are willing to back you, and therefore, I think uh, what worked for us then, which is a slow accumulation of reserves through profits, may not necessarily be the ideal approach today.
And Nitish, if you remember going back in time, what would be a rough revenue number back in 2005, then the next in 2010, 2015, and now, after IPO?
2005, we our revenues were like 20 lakhs a month. So annualized 2 crores, right? 2010, we would be doing about 100 crores, 100 crores, 70 crores kind of number. And now in 2021, we've done, I mean, we closed this year with 460 crores in revenue, uh, which was good growth over the previous year as well.
So 460 crores of revenue till now in 2021.
No, no, this was for
And
FY21, which is March ending 21.
FY21.
Yeah, yeah. So we had a
Got
460
it.
crore, about a 56
Got it.
crores EBITDA number.
And this EBITDA of 150 crores, you are flowing back to basically expand the family of friends of Nazara.
Yeah, 56 crores was our EBITDA for last year, which is March 21, not
Uh,
150 crores. Yeah, I think we have, of course, accumulated reserves as well. The company today has close to 480 crores of reserves that we can deploy to invest in companies. And we are continuing to do that, and we hope to continue to actively do that after the IPO. Now, also one big advantage we have is that we are the only listed gaming company today in our market, and that allows us to also offer our equity, which is listed equity, to partners, and that's a big opportunity because one, it gives us further leverage, but it also allows us to get our incoming partners, founders, management teams to hold Nazara stock, which kind of aligns them to the overall growth story.
And what would be the current valuation of the company in the public market?
I mean, that's very easy to look up. I think we today priced at about 5,000 crores.
I think that's fantastic, right? When we as entrepreneurs start, we never imagine the kind of scale that it has a potential of what you have built, right? So,
No, absolutely. But I think for us, what I realized as an entrepreneur is, especially after, the listing, is that whatever we did the last 20 years is really now the past. And post listing is completely new journey. It's a new beginning. And, our aspirations are also a lot. We have a lot more shareholders. And, we've always in the past delivered extremely high returns for our shareholders, and we are very driven to at least make our best effort and go with the best intent to do the same for our existing shareholders. Of course, there are a lot of variables that will go into this. Some may be in our control, some may not be in our control, but I think really the next few years, that's what we're looking at. How can we create a lot more value with this platform and with this base that we have now?
I think gaming has just started like taking off, right? If we see what has happened in 20 years, as we said in India in 2021, yesterday we got a good news for the entire gaming sector and the startup ecosystem of India. Play Simple got acquired for a cash deal of $360 million, which is huge, right? No
Absolutely.
other kind of company previously, right, in the startup ecosystem, which has raised so less amount of venture capital, just 4 million, got
Yeah.
acquired at such a scale. Like, so
I think the Play Simple deal is kind of the India World kind of moment during the dot com period in '99. When India World was sold for 500 crores, it kind of really kick started the whole dot com frenzy uh, towards starting a new venture in this space. Similarly, I think the Play Simple deal will show a lot of Indian entrepreneurs that gaming is coming of age in India. Also, Indian gaming companies can tackle global opportunities, scale globally, and also create immense value over a fairly short period of time, right? And I think you will see a kickstart of lot more gaming entrepreneurs, gaming companies in India, which is fantastic for the ecosystem. A lot more investors will also, take note of this.
we have now seen for the first time in India gaming focused funds coming up, whereas earlier gaming was considered to be a small niche market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think see, there are a lot of macro factors which have come together, right? The penetration of mobile devices, lowest data costs, uh, frictionless digital payment ecosystem which has developed. I think a lot of these opportunities are kind of really, you know, providing a lot of tailwind for the gaming industry in general in India.
And earlier it was said that, right, that Indians don't do in-app game purchases. I heard a funny news a few days back that a kid 12 years old purchased in-app, you know, uh, guns or something, in an in-app purchase
Hmm.
of 2.5 lakhs, and the mother didn't knew it. But yeah, it just shows that we are there.
No, I think that news was for the one you're referring to was, I think, a UK news, and obviously Apple provides a security locks over there, so something must have gone awry over there. But I think in-app purchases in India are starting to take off. Some global games have shown that they can generate good in-app revenues. I think the important thing is Indians are willing to spend money on in-app, but the game design needs to be really right to get there. Without that, you will not generate. So I think in the next 3 to 5 years, you will see in-app being the predominant source of revenues for gaming in India. Today, still a lot of games depend on advertising, etc. But I think that will change very rapidly.
And Nitish, you also raised from Rakesh Jhunjhunwala sir, uh, right? How did that happen, right? I'm very interested to know that story.
No, sure. I think we had some common connections, and I kind of reached out to him, and his team connected with me. And he really, we just had one meeting before he decided to invest in the company. And I think what he liked was two, three things. One was obviously gaming as a macro trend, which is going to become very large in the years to come, is something he really believed in. The second was Nazara had persevered over a very long time, right? When he met us in 2017, we had already existed for 17 years, so he felt that we had the capability to persevere for a long time and the energy to persevere for a long time. So even for the next decade, we could actually persevere as the market grows. And third, being a value investor, he appreciated our use of capital, limited use of capital, and high levels of profitability and cash flows that we generated. Unlike a lot of the other businesses he was seeing in the tech space burning a lot of money. I think these were the three things that he really liked, and which is why he invested in the company in late 2017.
And I think he would, being a value investor as he is, he would not have exited a single share of Nazara in the IPO.
No, he hasn't. He hasn't sold any shares, and at least in my conversations with him, he generally says, he's invested for the long run, with a 7 to 10 years, annual, because that's the kind of trend he really looks at in terms of gaming becoming very large. Plus, I think we've been very fortunate to have a lot of support from him. He spent a lot of time with us, and while he doesn't necessarily know everything about the gaming industry, his rich experience as an investor, right, comes up with a lot of pragmatic thoughts that have been very valuable to us. So I think more than the money, the time that Rakesh has given us has been quite valuable for us.
In the last year, in the last 20 years as an entrepreneur, was it ever a phase that you relaxed, or was always a relentless journey?
You know, uh, I can't really recollect a time where I would have at least mentally relaxed. You physically, of course, you go for holidays, you take a break, etc. But your mind is, unfortunately, as an entrepreneur, always active, right? You can't really switch it off. And I can't recollect. I think even our honeymoon period of the IPO, our IPO was very successful. Perhaps lasted all of one day before it was back to the same grind, right? And what do we do next, and how do we scale, and how do we move ahead? But I think that's the definition of an entrepreneur. You'll never be able to switch off thinking about your work. I try hard, but it's tough. What I have done, of course, is I have some hobbies, like I play the saxophone. I've been part of a band. So those times allow me to de-stress in a way, or take my mind off work for that period of time. And I think that's a must for all entrepreneurs. They should have some hobby and some passion that they're pursuing, because you have to strike the right balance in your life to be most productive.
Nitish, in your journey, how did you figure out, right, whether you were a 0 to 1 entrepreneur or a scale entrepreneur from 10 to 100 or both?
I'm still trying to figure out what I am as an entrepreneur. So, so I'll reserve my comment on that. I think if entrepreneurs figure out everything, then he's going to get bored. So, yeah, but I think obviously Nazara started off as a 0 to 1, right? And today we are expanding now more aggressively through acquiring companies or investing in companies that are already beyond 0 to 1, have product market fit. So, as a business, you can say we have evolved from 0 to 1 to now scale, and pursuing the scale is really what we are focused on. They're doing a lot of 0 to 1 activity.
But personally, what do you enjoy more? Uh, Doing 0 to 1 again, like inventing new things in Nazara, or building scale processes?
Yeah, I'm now Actually, enjoying more of building out this Friends of Nazara network. I think I'm really enjoying spending time meeting, entrepreneurs within the gaming space in India and outside, seeing how we can come together and seeing what their aspirations are, how we can help them and how they can help us, and how one plus one can be much more than two, right? And I think I'm enjoying that process of working with a lot more, entrepreneurs and building out this Friends of Nazara ecosystem. So I think I'm in that phase right now where that's really what's exciting me the most.
And if you can share your the point you decided to take your company public, right? And some key part of the processes, right? It's said that taking your company public in India is very hard because of the regulatory compliances.
Yeah. So we took a call to take the company public in 2017, and we made our first attempt in 2018. It took us almost a year to get to that point, but because of bad markets, we had to kind of pull back the launch at that point of time. But that learning experience for us, that 1 year learning experience for us was fantastic. The regulations are fairly strict in India, fairly in depth also. So there's a lot of work and a lot of partners that come together to make this happen. Whether it's the lawyers, whether it's the auditors, right, the merchant bankers, and you have to understand everything. So for us, that first attempt was a fantastic learning experience. The second time we planned to relaunch it was in, I think, early 2020, and by the time we got started was mid 2020. And we listed in March, so it took us about 6 to 9 months, I would say. It was far more easier process the second time around because we had already kind of learned what's needed. So it was more of the execution work than rather than the learning work. And all our partners came out and really worked very well for us. I think it's very critical for any company going IPO to ensure they choose the right partners, because if you have a weak link in this whole chain, then it's going to break. And I must also commend, I was pleasantly surprised with the way people at SEBI, for example, responded, or at the exchanges responded. Very proactive. We are a new business, right? A gaming business. They are trying to understand, etc. But there was a lot of proactiveness and positivity in terms of wanting to make it happen, rather than just find ways to create obstacles. And I think that was fantastic. And I think that mentality or that positive approach is going to lead to a lot more companies going public in the near future.
Even today, in India, and that is a sad aspect of being an entrepreneur in India, we see only single digit companies every year, startups especially, going public. Do you think there will be a time in India when we'll see hundreds of startups going public in a year?
Yeah, I'm waiting for the day NSE becomes the Nasdaq of India. I think that day is not very far away. So I think, when we listed, we were one of three or four new media, new tech companies listing in Indian market. But you are already seeing this year, right? Many tech companies lined up for listing. Zomato just got approved, and many more are in the line. And I think next 2 3 years, you will see that accelerate significantly. So I think that bell has been rung, and now you're going to see a long queue of quality companies. And also, the lot of groundwork has happened, right, over the last decade. Investors have invested, a lot of companies have developed, grown. So you have, even in India, already a large enough ecosystem. So I think, without any doubt, that you're going to see a large explosion of tech companies going public in India, creating immense value, and that's going to be very exciting.
Nitish, one I want to know your views on, right, in the last 20 years. Do you think that entrepreneurship in Indian, because now you have built globally, right? The Nazara ecosystem is global. Being an entrepreneur in India is very hard. Raising capital is hard. Hiring is hard. User acquisition and then monetization of the user is hard, right? When does it become easy for a founder relatively in India in his journey?
I'll be very honest. I can't comment on that because I have only worked in India, and therefore I don't have a comparative to really look at, right? Had I studied in the US, or had I worked in the US, or had I set up a company in the US, then I could say US is much easier than India, or it's not. The life of an entrepreneur is tough. There's no two things about that. Now, whether it's because of the nature of being an entrepreneur that it's tough, or because of being an entrepreneur in India, it is tough. I really don't know. But I have not had any in the last 2 decades, I have not had any such big issues per se that have come in my way because I've been in India. Of course, gaming also was really not a business till now that was regulated or had any interference, etc. And therefore, maybe we were kind of under the radar. I don't know, but at least we have not faced any problems of being in India per se.
Ritesh, if you reflect back, what traits you had, as a person that help you succeed, that help you, you know, fight this long marathon of 20 years?
I think. Uh, Very simple. The willingness and ability to get knocked down and get up again and make another attempt uh, is the one single trait I would say, right? Because over 2 decades, there were many times when things did not work out, and we kind of took a step back and then went back to work and again attempted it. Having persevered in one industry for 20 years is not easy, especially when the industry didn't exist. So I think that perseverance over a very long period of time has really helped us get to where we are.
And if any entrepreneur, besides perseverance, has to emulate habits of Nitish and emulate habit skills of Nitish, what would
Yeah.
that be?
I think what I like to do is one is have a very positive approach in whatever we do. And I'll cite specific example. For example, Nazara in its 2 decades journey has had very little to no litigation, either by us or on us, right? And in over 2 decades of journey, that's a long period of time. And the reason for that has been my thought process that any time spent fighting with anybody generates a lot of negative energy, which kind of harms our own thinking, our own bandwidth, right? So it's always better to meet up face to face, sort the problem out. Even if you need to leave something on the table, leave it, but move on, because the amount of time you will save on that negative energy and convert it into positive energy will make a world of a difference. So that's, I think, one philosophy we have had, which has helped us. Again, not necessarily this philosophy would work for everybody in every industry, but having a very positive, collaborative approach uh, to our partners, to our competitors, to our team, and to life in general, I think is something we are very committed to. And usually, we do not do anything that would steal us sleep at night. And this kind of shows up in very small things, right? For example, we rarely enter into contracts that have large future commitments that we have made, because we know what we can commit today, right? In present moment, we don't know what we can commit 3 years later. So that's kind of a philosophy that we have of avoiding large future commitments down the line, which we may or may not be able to keep up to. So small things like this in our DNA, I think, has been very helpful to me and the company, and we hope to stay true to them.
And this, did ever in your 20 years journey you thought that let me hand over the keys to a professional manager or a CEO, and I should go on a 1 or 2 year break on a yacht or in mountains, rejuvenate, then maybe come back or start something new.
Sure. So I think from a professional manager or CEO perspective, the best thing we did or I did was to bring in Manish Agarwal, who is a CEO who joined in 2015. Because Manish brought in a lot of professional approach to the business, a lot of renewed energy, I would say. And last 6 years, me and Manish have worked very closely as twin engines, as we call ourselves, to propel this plane towards the IPO and beyond. So I think that was extremely helpful because it was a bandwidth multiplier. I think uh, me and Manish together, right, at one into one or two into two did not become four, but became 40, and that really allowed us to propel a lot. So I think, yeah, but yeah, did I go away on a holiday? Not really. And did I stop micromanaging? Also, not really. So that's another question you should ask Manish another day, and you'll get the right answer.
And my last question, Nitish, is right. Uh, how do you find multipliers of yourself? Like you mentioned this term quite a lot in a podcast, right? That's a key skill which I want to share with the listeners. Of,
I think the most important thing in life is to keep your passion alive, right? And I try to reinvent myself and try to find new passions as I go along. I mean, gaming has been a passion for me for since I was very young, and I have pursued that. But I've also picked up passions along the way. For example, I told you I played the saxophone, which I picked up when I was 20 years old. I actually started learning Krav Maga, which is the Israeli defense martial arts, 3 4 years back, and now I'm certified level three. So I find that if I find new interests and I also do, reinvent myself, I kind of keep myself fresh and alive, and that's really what is a force multiplier. Because if you are mentally there and mentally young and energetic, that will kind of reflect in everything that you do, right? Whether it's your work, whether it's your family, whether it's your personal life. And I think that's what's the multiplier for me.
and I was also asking about the multiplier in other people. You mentioned when you found Manish, it was 2 into 2, 40. Similarly, when you're looking for friends of Nazara, is 1 into 1, 11. How do you
Right.
find those compatible soulmates or multiplier partners, whatever you want to call it?
I think any human being with any human being, right? If both's intent is positive, then the multiplier will automatically happen, right? I think that magic is there within us human beings to create huge value in whatever we do. Only positive intent and positive thought is what is always needed. So I think that's the only thing I look for, and I also offer to achieve that multiplier you're talking about.
Thank you so much, Manish. It's been wonderful, living your journey in the last 40 minutes through your eyes, learning from you. It's been a fantastic experience for me, and I hope it's the same for, our listeners.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me.